What's up, my dudes? Yo, shout out to that notification squad. You boys are the real ones, okay? Talking about the terrain deformation of MX vs. ATV Legends, and we're going to be doing some gameplay here on, the greatest literally possible terrain deformation track game, the whole caboodle, all right? If you've not experienced Sandwick with full gate maximum laps on MX vs. ATV Reflex on the 360 version, you're missing out on one of the greatest. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say it is the greatest experience you can have in an arcade motocross game is going in there on Sandwick on the 360 version of Reflex on a 450, maximum laps, maximum riders, all-time difficulty. It don't get any better, bro. This is why I am dumbfounded when we can have a MXGP game in 2020 that you can't even tell that there even is terrain deformation in it. That's why I get so mad. That's why I get so furious, dog. Because they literally had something that is a totally different dimension back in 2008 or 9 whenever Reflex came out. But anyways, this is not a rant video here, okay? So I know a lot of you guys looked at the gameplay of MX vs. ATV Legends, the gameplay trailer, and I got a couple comments in there talking about like, well, it didn't really see much terrain deformation, you know. A lot of people are a little concerned about that. I think part of why we didn't really see much of it is because the entire gameplay trailer is like, 10 seconds long? Maybe 15? So they can't really show much like, terrain deformation development of any sort. I guess they could have if they would have rode like, 15 laps on a track and then like somehow recorded the gameplay trailer of that. But one thing I want to say in this video though is like, guys, don't get too stressed out about the terrain deformation on MX vs. ATV Legends, because I promise you it's at least going to be to the level of what it was in All Out, but it's just going to be like tweaked upon, right? So you're not going to have MX vs. ATV Legends come out and then it's going to be like a replay of MXGP 2020 where it's like, where is the terrain deformation, right? It's not going to be like that, dog. I promise you. It's not going to be to that level. Like they've already proved with the updates to the terrain deformation of All Out that they're definitely thinking about it, right? They definitely want to put attention on that. And if you look, I think on Twitter, MX vs. ATV, I think they replied to their own post where they said, the team is hard at work on the physics. We're going to have more gameplay to show in the game, but that's for after they develop the game more. So I'm getting it in my head now that I really think they announced MX vs. ATV Legends like way before most games would announce their game because of it being the THQ Nordic 10th anniversary. I think they really rushed to try to get some gameplay thrown together, and that kind of is proven by the Supercross tracks of the Legend gameplay having the literal fucking intro to MX vs. ATV All Out on the little screens in the background of the Supercross tracks on the Legends gameplay. That was a little whoopsie-doopsie there. So obviously you can tell certain elements have been rushed. Maybe that's why they showed all these weird camera angles and not very much gameplay. I think it's all kind of adding into that. I feel like, we may not see Legends actually released until like the end of 2022. It literally might be that long before we actually get it. Certainly now that they're getting a lot of backlash with the gameplay trailer, from a lot of different angles saying it looks like All Out and stuff like that, I think they're going to spend even more time on the game now. I think it's going to take even longer until it comes out now. But I think that's why everything looks a little rushed, why they didn't really show much deformation or whatever, because they were trying to rush out that gameplay trailer for the THQ Nordic 10th anniversary, or I think it was 10th anniversary, right? The big live stream that they had. And, everybody's been talking about, yo, MX vs. ATV, we don't just want another DLC for All Out. Show us the next game, right? A lot of people have been talking and saying things like that. So I think they probably felt a little pressured to do it. That's one element of Reflex that I think it's just undeniable that Reflex has the greatest terrain deformation system of any motocross game out there, period. I mean, if they're not focusing their attention on trying to make the deformation like Reflex, then they're doing something wrong. You know what I'm getting at? Like, you want to do everything you can to try to at least just even get it to the point of how good it was in Reflex. Fuck talking about making it better than it was in Reflex. Let's just try to get this shit back to the level that Reflex was at. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of goes in with every aspect of the game. The physics, the, whip system, the everything. Terrain deformation, everything. They just got to try to get it back to the level of Reflex. They haven't even gotten it back to the level of Reflex yet. So anyways, going through these different pictures here, I mean, you can kind of see some little almost like sand rut vibe type shit on one of the tracks, but sometimes kind of hard to tell if it's pre-made or it's deformation. Yeah, I don't know. This has just really got me questioning really how far into development they actually are with the game, right? It really makes you think. And in that case, it's like, even if they would have showed some deformation in the gameplay, I mean, that's something where that could totally change. Because, like, this is what makes these arcade games different than, like, MX Simulator or MX Bikes. With those simulators, you can literally change the amount of deformation on whatever track you're on. And depending on how many riders you have, you can literally change how much deformation is going to happen on MX Simulator and MX Bikes. You can't really do that in these arcade games unless you literally made the custom track on Reflex. Then I think you can adjust it there. But, like, what I'm getting at, though, is, like, all they would have to do to drastically change their deformation is just change how much it's doing on the track, right? It doesn't take a lot to totally change the way it feels in the game. But the thing I love so much about Reflex is the fact that when you go to, like, Sandwick, that deformation feels like it's completely different than the deformation on Razorback. And then that deformation feels completely different than the deformation on Pine Top, right? That's the whole thing that I absolutely hate about the road system on MX Simulator and some of these deformation systems and some of these other motocross games. It feels like it's just the exact same shit no matter what kind of dirt compound that you're on, no matter what kind of track that you're on. It's going to make the exact same kind of terrain deformation, and if you guys ever have rode in real life, you will realize that it's not like that at all. If you get on a hard-packed, dry, blue groove style track, that's going to make totally different ruts than a freshly prepped brownie mix, dirt track. And that's going to rut up totally different than like a muddy track, a wet style track. So that's really one of the most critical elements of terrain deformation development in these motocross games, is not only getting that balance between cushion and like an actual sturdy hard pack filling, but it's also got to make different type of deformation on whatever different kind of track you're on, right? If you're on a sand track, you're going to want that deformation to feel a lot softer and cushiony than if you're on a drier track. A drier track's going to make more of those 100% sturdy style ruts on it and choppy roughness. It's not just the ruts, it's also the roughness. The kind of roughness you're going to have on a freshly prepped Redbud is going to be completely different than a beat up, California style training track or some shit. The actual braking bumps and acceleration bumps are going to be completely different on those two different things, right? So that's kind of the whole trick. You really got to have somebody that has rode on all different kind of compounds of tracks in real life to actually understand what the fuck it does. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what kind of gets them in a predicament where the deformation doesn't feel as good as you hope for it to feel or what you remember Reflex feeling like, right? So hopefully they can get that by the time the game comes out. I have no idea if they're going to be able to do that now, but now it's really starting to click in my head what's going on here and why, Legends resembles All Out so much and why they didn't show very much of it, stuff like that. I honestly think they're really still in a super early point of development with this next MX versus ATV game, but the deformation is going to be better than it is in any of those milestone games. I can promise you that. And that's with a lot of these elements of Legends, like the deformation, the jump fun factor, the freeness to the whips, dog, all that's going to be there. All of it's going to be there, okay? It's just all in how accurate they got with the tweaking of all of that shit. Is it going to be like a, Reflex caliber game by the time it comes out? Or is it going to be somewhere in that neighborhood between All Out and then Reflex, right? I don't really know. But, they're not in the business to just make another Reflex, even though, all of us want that. They are in the business of making something different, right? This is not called MX vs. ATV Reflex 2, even though we all want that. That's not what it is. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't think it's going to feel exactly like Reflex. I really don't. It may have certain elements like that, but I think it's going to be more of just like a whole new feeling that we've never felt before. I think that's more like what it's going to be like, and I think it's going to be, obviously similar elements and vibes of All Out, but something that we've never really exactly experienced before. That's what I personally think it's going to feel like when it actually does come out. But either way, definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Just wanted to say, don't get too stressed out about the deformation not really being shown in the trailer or anything, because obviously by what they're saying in their replies, we're going to see a lot more in the future before the game even comes out. So, and with all the deformation improvements they made with All Out, dude, it's in pretty good hands. Like, it really is. If you've not played All Out since they updated the deformation, you might want to go do that, and then you won't be so worried about it. But either way, man, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. See you boys on that next one.